The polished floor of the St. Jude's private wing reflected the fluorescent lights like a frozen lake. Genevieve Collins saw her distorted, 8-month pregnant belly in the shine, just moments before she felt her husband's hands on her back. It wasn't a catch, it was a shove, a violent, calculated push. As she fell, she heard him scream. But it wasn't a scream of fear for her. It was a scream of frustration. She blacked out, believing her life was over, unaware that the surgeon about to fight for her life was the one man her husband prayed she would never meet again. The penthouse on Lenox Hill was less a home and more a statement. It was a 6,000-square-foot monument to Brent Collins's success, with floor-to-ceiling windows that captured all of Manhattan, bottling the city's ambition and serving it as a backdrop for their perfect life. Genevieve Collins, 28 years old and 8.5 months pregnant, stood tracing the outline of the nursery's hand-painted mural. A soft, grey elephant held a balloon, floating toward a crescent moon. It was the only room in the apartment that felt like hers. The rest was all Brent, polished chrome, black marble, and art so modern it felt cold to the touch. Brentwood Collins was a man sculpted from charm. He was the Manhattan millionaire the society pages adored. Sharp suits, a disarming smile, and a portfolio that, he claimed, was as solid as the bedrock beneath their building. He had swept Genevieve off her feet 2 years ago. She, an orphan with a quiet inheritance, had been working in archival restoration, a life of dusty, beautiful, forgotten things. Brent was loud, vibrant, and present. He made her feel seen. "You're nesting again, darling," Brent said, kissing the top of her head. He loosened his tie, a flash of expensive silk. "You should be resting. We have the benefit gala tonight." Genevieve leaned back into him, her hands instinctively cradling her stomach. "I know. I feel so good today." He's quiet. He's saving his energy, just like his father. Brent's phone buzzed on the kitchen island. It was a persistent, demanding sound. It had been buzzing like that for weeks. "Brent, is everything all right with the new acquisition?" she asked. "Perfect. Absolutely perfect." His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. He checked the phone, his thumb moving rapidly across the screen. "Just partners. Eager ones. This deal. Ginny, this is the one. It sets us up for life. For our son's life." Genevieve wanted to believe him. She truly did. But a chill had settled in the apartment that had nothing to do with the thermostat. Brent had become distracted. He took calls in his locked study, his voice a low, angry murmur. When she'd asked about their finances, wanting to plan for the baby, he'd laughed it off. "I handle the money, sweet. You handle the baby," he'd said, tapping her nose. She was isolated. Her parents, Robert and Anna, had died in a boating accident when she was 20. They had been her world. Her only other family was her godfather, Dr. Donovan Gregory. Donovan had been her father's best friend, a man who'd built a medical technology empire from scratch, and then, bafflingly to the rest of the world, had returned to practicing trauma surgery, claiming he preferred solving problems he could actually see. But she and Donovan were estranged. When she'd first introduced Brent, Donovan had been polite but distant. After their second meeting, he'd taken her to dinner. "He's too polished, Ginny," Donovan had said, his surgeon's hands steepled on the table. "You mean he's successful?" she'd countered, defensive. "I mean he's a performance. I ran a standard check, the kind I run on any new board member." "He's not a board member. He's the man I love." "His financials are a house of cards, Genevieve. He's leveraged to the hilt. And he's interested in your trust." Genevieve had been furious. Her parents' trust was managed by Donovan until her 30th birthday or her marriage, whichever came last. It was a peculiar setup, designed to protect her. She had accused Donovan of trying to control her, of treating her like a child. He had warned her. She had refused to listen, and the silence between them had stretched from weeks to months. And now, almost 2 years. She missed him terribly, but her pride and Brent's constant, subtle poisoning— "Your godfather just can't stand to see you happy with someone else, baby," had kept her from calling. That evening, as Genevieve was fastening a pearl earring, a sharp, searing pain shot through her lower back. She gasped, grabbing the edge of the marble vanity. "Brent!" He was at the door in an instant, but his first expression wasn't concern. It was annoyance. It was there for only a fraction of a second, a flicker of profound irritation, before the mask of the loving husband snapped back into place. "Darling, what is it? The baby?" I think so." It was a sharp pain. Braxton Hicks, maybe. But it felt different. Brent took charge, his voice smooth and reassuring. "No gala for us, then. We're going to the hospital. Right now. Get your bag." "My doctor is at Lenox Hill," she said, breathing through the fading cramp. "No," Brent said, a little too quickly. "We'll go to St. Jude's private. It's the best. I have a relationship with the board there. They'll treat you like a queen." "But all my files—" "I'll have them transferred. Just go, Ginny. Put your coat on." His insistence was strange. St. Jude's was across town, known more for its luxurious recovery suites than its obstetric excellence. But the pain, combined with her trust in him, made her nod. She grabbed her pre-packed bag, wincing as another, milder cramp began. As she walked past his study, she noticed his laptop was open. A stark, threatening email was on the screen. She only caught a few words. Final notice. 30 days. Collins Group assets to be seized. "Brent," she called out, her voice trembling. He rushed over, slamming the laptop shut. "Not now, Genevieve. We need to go. The baby. Think about the baby." He guided her to the elevator, his hand firmly on her back. The chill she'd felt earlier had become a paralyzing cold. She was being moved, managed, handled. And as the elevator descended, she had the terrifying sensation that she wasn't being taken to the hospital for her own safety, but for his. The private wing of St. Jude's was designed to look like a 5-star hotel. Soft lighting, abstract art, and nurses who spoke in hushed, concierge-like tones. They settled Genevieve in a private assessment room, the kind with plush chairs and a view of the East River. A resident checked her vitals. "Well, Mrs. Collins, the pains seem irregular. Your blood pressure is a little high, but that's understandable. We'll monitor you for a few hours. It's likely just false labor." Brent sat beside her, holding her hand, the perfect picture of devotion. "Whatever it takes, Doctor. My wife and my son are my world." The resident smiled and left them alone. The moment the door clicked shut, Brent's demeanor shifted. He dropped her hand and stood up, pacing to the window. His phone, which he'd set to vibrate, was buzzing incessantly against the glass tabletop. "Brent, talk to me," Genevieve pleaded, sitting up. The high-strung fear in the room was making her nauseous. "What I saw on your laptop. Assets to be seized. What is happening?" "It's business, Ginny. A hostile play by a competitor. It's complicated. You're pregnant. You don't need this stress." "I am stressed," she cried, her voice rising. "You're lying to me. I feel like I don't even know you. These calls, the locked study, this new hospital. What are you hiding?" Brent's face, usually so open and handsome, tightened into a mask of cold fury. I am hiding the pressure of keeping this family afloat. I am hiding the fact that I work 100 hours a week to pay for that nursery, for this private room. I don't care about this room. I care about the truth and my trust. Donovan warned me you were interested in my trust. It was the wrong thing to say. The mention of Donovan's name was like gasoline on a fire. "Donovan," Brent spat, his voice low and dangerous. "Of course, your sainted godfather. The man who thinks I'm white trash. The man who holds the purse strings. Is that what this is about? You've been talking to him?" "No, I haven't spoken to him in almost 2 years, thanks to you." "Good. Because he won't help you. He won't help us. He'd rather see us fail." Brent's phone buzzed again. He snatched it up, looking at the screen. A wave of pure panic washed over his features. He didn't even bother to hide it. "Who is that?" Genevieve demanded, pushing herself to her feet. "It's no one." "Let me see the phone, Brent." "Sit down, Genevieve. You're hysterical." He turned to walk out of the room. She grabbed his arm. "Don't you walk away from me!" Brent ripped his arm from her grasp. He stalked out into the empty, softly lit corridor. Genevieve, clumsy and terrified, followed him. "Brent, stop!" He spun around in the hallway. "You need to stop. You don't understand what's at stake." "Then tell me. It's Penelope," he roared, finally breaking. "Okay, it's Penelope. The deal is dead. She's pulling out. We're ruined." Genevieve froze. "Penelope? Your business partner? The one who you said was in Dubai?" Brent ran his hands through his hair, cornered. "She's not just my partner, Ginny. It's complicated." The blood drained from Genevieve's face. The implication hung in the sterile air, thick and suffocating. "You're sleeping with her." It wasn't a question. Brent's face was pale. "It didn't mean anything. It was for the business. She has the capital. We had an arrangement." "An arrangement," Genevieve whispered. The walls seemed to be closing in. "While I'm pregnant with your child—" "Ginny, listen to me," he said, advancing on her, his eyes wild. "We are in trouble. Real trouble. The lenders, they're not nice people. I need you to sign some papers. Just a simple power of attorney. It will let me access your trust fund, just as collateral. I can fix this. I can fix all of this." "You want my inheritance?" Donovan was right. He was right about everything. "Forget Donovan. He's not here. I am your husband." "No," Genevieve said, backing away, her hand on her belly. "No, I won't. I'm calling Donovan." "You are not calling him." Brent lunged forward and grabbed her phone from her hand, throwing it against the far wall where it shattered. "What are you doing?" she screamed. "You are going to be reasonable," he shouted, backing her against the wall. A stainless steel linen cart was behind her. "You're a monster," she wept, her hands flat against his chest, trying to keep him at bay. "I am a survivor," he snarled. "And you and this thing, you're not going to ruin me." He shoved her. It wasn't a small push. It wasn't an accident. It was a violent, two-handed shove, born of pure, distilled panic and rage. Genevieve, already off balance, had nowhere to go. Her feet tangled with the wheels of the linen cart. She stumbled backward, her arms flailing. She twisted, trying to protect her stomach, but the momentum was too much. She went down, hard. Her left temple struck the sharp, metal corner of the cart's railing. The world exploded in a flash of white, agonizing pain. She landed on her side, the impact knocking the breath from her lungs. For a second, there was silence. Just the hum of the hospital. Brent stared down, his chest heaving, his eyes wide with horror at what he'd done. Genevieve looked up at him, her vision blurring. Then she felt it. A sudden, warm gush of fluid. But it wasn't just fluid. It was thick. It was blood. "Brent," she whispered, her hand moving to the spreading stain on her hospital gown. You. The world tilted. The last thing she saw before the darkness took her was Brent's face. He wasn't rushing to help her. He was looking down the empty hallway, checking for cameras, his mind already spinning a new lie. Then he started screaming, "Help! Somebody help! My wife! She fell! She's bleeding! My baby!" The call came into the surgical wing at 10:17 p.m. Code Omega, OB-GYN, Level 1 Trauma. Dr. Donovan Gregory was finishing a complex bowel resection on a car crash victim. He hadn't sat down in 6 hours. At 58, he had the silver hair of a statesman, but the eyes of a hawk, and hands that were still the talk of the surgical field. "Keaton, what's the new one?" he asked his scrub nurse, his voice a low rumble, amplified by his mask. "Female, 28, 35 weeks pregnant. Chart says syncopal episode, fainted in the corridor. Fell and struck her head. Patient is GCS 7, unresponsive. BP is 80/40 and dropping. Fetal heart rate is decelerating. Suspected placental abruption." "Who's the OB?" Donovan asked, stripping his bloody gloves. "Dr. Peterson is 20 minutes out. They paged you as chief of surgery. She's crashing, Don." Donovan nodded, moving to the scrub sinks. "Get all 3 ready. Full trauma setup. And get the NICU team in there now. This baby is coming out." Donovan Gregory didn't have to work. His company, Gregory Medical Devices, had revolutionized cardiovascular stents. He was worth billions. He could be on a yacht. He could be anywhere. But Donovan was a man built of restless, precise energy. His parents had been missionaries, and he'd inherited their sense of duty, if not their faith. He'd lost his wife to cancer a decade ago, and his best friends, Robert and Anna, not long after. Surgery wasn't a job, it was an anchor. It was the only place where his obsessive control and vast resources could create order out of chaos. He strode into OR3. The room was a flurry of activity. The patient was being transferred to the table. "What's the name?" he barked, pulling on new gloves. "Genevieve Collins," the anesthesiologist said. "Husband's in the waiting room. Name's Brent." Donovan's entire body went rigid. The blood drained from his face. Collins. It couldn't be. Not his Ginny. He'd seen her wedding announcement in the paper 2 years ago. Genevieve Wallace, married to Brentwood Collins. He had torn the paper in half. "Keaton, the patient's face," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. Nurse Keaton, confused, gently moved the oxygen mask and the swarm of people working on her. Donovan stepped forward. It was her. It was his Ginny. Anna's eyes, Robert's stubborn chin. But her face was pale as marble, and a massive, swelling hematoma was rising on her left temple. This was not a feint. This was violence. For one agonizing second, the surgeon vanished. He was just a godfather, looking at the child he had promised to protect. A child he had failed. He saw her at her 5th birthday, covered in cake. He saw her at her parents' funeral, a hollowed-out shell of a girl. "Dr. Gregory!" Keaton's voice was sharp, pulling him back. Donovan blinked. The ice returned. He was no longer a godfather. He was a machine. "Fetal heart rate is at 80, the OB nurse called out. "We're losing him." "We are not losing anyone," Donovan said. His voice was so cold it burned. "This is a classical C-section concurrent with a trauma laparotomy. Keaton, I want a number 10 blade. Anesthesia, how is she?" "Unstable. We're pushing blood and pressors. She's bleeding out from somewhere." "It's the abruption. The placenta is detaching. Get me into that abdomen. Now." Donovan made the first cut, a long, vertical slice. There was no time for a neat bikini line incision. This was about life and death. The moment he entered the peritoneal cavity, Dark, non-clotting blood welled up. "Full abruption," he confirmed, his voice grim. "Suction." He worked with a speed that was almost frightening. His hands were not a man's hands, they were instruments. He located the uterus, made the incision, and broke the amniotic sac. "Baby is out," he announced, lifting the small, blue, and utterly still form of a baby boy. The NICU team, led by a neonatologist named Dr. Pierce, was there instantly, cutting the cord and rushing the infant to the resuscitation warmer. There was no cry, just the frantic, quiet work of the NICU team. "Come on, Leo," Donovan whispered under his breath, a name he'd heard Genevieve's mother mention once. "Come on, little man." "She's bottoming out," the anesthesiologist yelled. "VFib!" Genevieve was in cardiac arrest. "She's hemorrhaging from the uterus. It's a tonic, it won't contract," Nurse Keaton said. "Paddles," Donovan ordered. "Charge to 200. Clear." Her body jumped. The monitor blipped, then flatlined. "Again! Clear!" Nothing. "We have a cry," Dr. Pierce shouted from the corner. A thin, reedy wail finally cut through the tension. The baby was alive. "Good," Donovan said, never looking up. "Now we save his mother. Give me a Zerovicryl on a heavy needle. I'm throwing B. Lynch sutures. We are not losing this uterus. We are not losing her." He began to stitch, his hands flying, weaving the sutures in a complex pattern designed to physically compress the bleeding uterus. He worked with a cold, contained fury. He was not just fighting a hemorrhage, he was fighting the man who had put her on this table. "BP is coming up," the anesthesiologist said, his voice filled with disbelief. 90/50. Sinus rhythm. She's back. Donovan took a single deep breath. He looked at the mangled, bruised tissue. "This wasn't a fall, Keaton." "Sir." "Look at the contusions," he said, pointing with his forceps to a series of bruises on her abdomen, now visible. "This is trauma. This is force. Someone did this to her." He finished the closure, his stitches precise and angry. He stepped back from the table. "Move her to the surgical ICU, 1-to-1 nursing, and put a security guard on her door." "A guard, sir?" "A guard," Donovan repeated. "And notify the hospital administrator. I want every second of security footage from the private wing, from 4 hours ago until her arrival in this OR. Find it. And nobody sees her without my personal authorization, especially not the husband." While Genevieve was wheeled to the SICU, a ghost suspended between life and death, Brent Collins was in the surgical waiting room, performing the role of his life. He sat with his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. Nurses, accustomed to tragedy, offered him coffee and blankets. "It was so fast," he choked out to a sympathetic-looking charge nurse. She's so clumsy with the pregnancy. She tripped over her own feet. I tried to catch her." His phone buzzed. Penelope. He ignored it. He needed witnesses to his grief. He paced. He made a show of trying to pray. He asked over and over, "Is there any news?" At 3:10 a.m., a woman walked into the waiting room. She was not hospital staff. She wore a severe black trench coat, her blonde hair pulled into a tight chignon. Her heels clicked with an expensive, sharp sound. This was Penelope Croft. She ignored the nurse's station and walked directly to Brent. "You're a fool," she whispered, her voice devoid of any emotion. "Penelope?" "What are you doing here?" he hissed, grabbing her arm and pulling her into a deserted hallway. "You can't be here. You said you would handle it. You said she would sign the papers." "She wouldn't. She started asking questions. She brought up him." "Him?" "Her godfather. Donovan Gregory." Penelope's perfectly sculpted face went pale. "Gregory? As in Gregory Medical? That Gregory? I don't know. How should I know?" Brent was sweating. Look, it doesn't matter. It's being taken care of. What did you do, Brent? Penelope asked, her eyes narrowing. Your text message said there was an accident. She fell. She's in surgery. It's bad. How bad? Brent couldn't meet her eyes. She hit her head. And the baby, they're both in surgery. It's a mess. Penelope leaned against the wall, a cruel smile playing on her lips. So, it is handled. In a way. If she doesn't, you know. Then you, as the grieving husband, get control of the trust, especially with a baby. It's not that simple, Brent snapped. The trust is complicated. It's managed by the Godfather until she's 30. He has to approve everything. If she dies, he'll be all over me. Then you'd better hope she wakes up, signs the papers, and then has a tragic complication, Penelope said coldly. You're running out of time. My investors aren't just suing you, Brent. They're the kind of people who send men to your house, our house, and they know where you live. I can fix this, Brent stammered, his bravado gone. I just need to see her. I need to know what she's saying. No, you don't! A voice boomed from the end of the hall. Brent and Penelope froze. Dr. Donovan Gregory stood there, still in his blood-stained scrubs, a surgical cap in his hand. He looked like an avenging angel, all silver hair and righteous fury. Who are you? Brent demanded, trying to regain his composure. I'm the man who just spent 3 hours putting your wife back together, Donovan said, his voice a low, lethal rumble. He walked toward them, and Brent instinctively took a step back. Is she okay? Brent asked, the fake tremor returning to his voice. Donovan stopped a foot from him. He was taller than Brent, and where Brent was soft from expensive dinners, Donovan was wiry and hard. She is in a medically induced coma. We saved her. We saved your son. My son? A boy, Brent said, trying to manufacture a tear. Oh, thank God. I need to see them. No, Donovan said. What? I'm her husband. I'm his father. You can't stop me. I am Dr. Donovan Gregory, he said, and the name landed in the room with the weight of a vault door slamming shut. Penelope's breath hitched. Brent's blood ran cold. He knew the name. The mythical, estranged Godfather. The Billionaire. And he was the surgeon. You're her Godfather, Brent stuttered. I am, Donovan said, his eyes drilling into Brent, which means I am the administrator of her parents' trust, and it also means I am the chief of surgery at this hospital, and I am telling you, Mr. Collins, you are not permitted in her room. This is outrageous. I'll sue you. I'll sue this hospital. Go ahead, Donovan said, unimpressed. My lawyers are better than yours. You, Mr. Collins, claim she fainted and fell. But the injuries tell a different story. The bruises on her arms are grip marks. The contusion on her abdomen is from blunt force. Her injuries are not consistent with a simple fall. They are, however, extremely consistent with being violently shoved. Brent's face was ashen. I tried to catch her. I must have grabbed her. And this woman? Donovan said, his gaze shifting to Penelope. Is she family? Is she here to offer support? Penelope, ever the survivor, pasted on a sympathetic look. I'm Penelope Croft, Mr. Collins's business associate. I came as soon as I heard the terrible news. Brent is devastated. I'm sure he is, Donovan said. Well, Miss Croft, your association is no longer required. And Mr. Collins, you may wait. But you will not see Genevieve, and you will not see the baby until I have spoken with the police. The police? Brent yelped. Standard procedure for a trauma case with inconsistent stories. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a godson in the NICU to check on. Donovan turned and walked away, leaving Brent and Penelope in the hallway, their entire world collapsing around them. "You idiot!" Penelope seethed. "You didn't just push his pregnant wife. You pushed a billionaire's goddaughter. We are not just ruined. We are done." Brent leaned against the wall, hyperventilating. The charm was gone. The handsome face was just a mask of pure, primal fear. He was trapped. Donovan didn't sleep. He showered in his private office, put on a fresh set of scrubs, and went to the NICU. He stood over the small incubator. Leo Collins, he would have to have a talk with Genevieve about that surname, was tiny, fragile but fighting. His little chest rose and fell with the help of a ventilator. "He's strong, Dr. Gregory," said Dr. Pierce, the neonatologist. "Lungs are premature, but his APGAR scores climbed. He's a fighter." "He comes from a line of them," Donovan said softly. He placed his hand on the side of the incubator, a barrier of plastic between him and the last living link to his best friends. He made a silent promise. "I failed your mother, Leo. I will not fail you." From there, he went to the hospital's security office. The administrator, a man who owed his job to Donovan's donations, had the footage queued up. "It's from a bad angle, Dr. Gregory. It's a service camera for the linen cart. Play it." The footage was grainy, black and white. It had no audio. But it didn't need any. He saw Genevieve follow Brent into the hall. He saw the argument. He saw her back away. He saw Brent lunge, grab her phone, and smash it. And then, clear as day, he saw the shove. It wasn't a stumble. It wasn't an accident. It was a violent, two-handed attack. He watched, his stomach twisting as his goddaughter fell, her head cracking against the cart. He watched Brent pause, look both ways, and then concoct his performance of panic. "Make 3 copies of this," Donovan ordered, his voice hollow. "One for me, one for the administrator, and one for Detective Walsh. Get him here, now." While the police were en route, Donovan made another call. He didn't call his corporate lawyers. He called his personal security team. A different breed of men. Ones who handled international acquisitions and corporate espionage. "Paul," he said into the phone, "I need a full workup. Brentwood Collins. And his associate, Penelope Croft. I want everything. Bank accounts, shell corporations, debt, liens, private emails, everything. I want it by sunrise." "Sunrise," Paul confirmed. "Consider it done, Mr. Gregory." Donovan finally went to the SICU. Genevieve was lying in the bed, a constellation of tubes and wires connecting her to the machines that were breathing for her. A large white bandage was wrapped around her head. Nurse Keaton, the scrub nurse from the OR, was sitting by her bedside. Donovan had requested her specifically. "Any change?" he asked. "Vitals are stable, sir. We're keeping the sedation light. We can wake her when you're ready." "Good. Keep her comfortable." He sat in the chair that Brent should have been sitting in. He looked at Genevieve's face, bruised and swollen, and the dam of his professional detachment finally broke. A single hot tear of rage and guilt traced a path down his cheek. "I am so sorry, Ginny," he whispered to her unconscious form. "I saw him. I saw what he was. But I let my pride and your stubbornness keep me away. I should have fought harder. I should have protected you from this." He sat there for an hour, just watching her breathe as the mechanisms of his vengeance began to turn outside the hospital walls. At 5:30 a.m., his personal tablet pinged. It was the report from Paul. It was worse than he could have imagined. Brent Collins wasn't a millionaire. He was a black hole of debt. He had 3 mortgages, 2 of them fraudulent. His acquisitions were shell companies used to launder money from a cartel in South America, investors who were, as Penelope had hinted, not the suing kind. Penelope Croft was the real brains. She was the one who had the connections, and she was the one who had targeted Genevieve, knowing her trust fund was the only asset large enough to bail them out. The papers Brent wanted Genevieve to sign weren't just for collateral. They gave him full, irrevocable power of attorney, allowing him to liquidate her entire trust, the trust Robert and Anna had built, and funnel it to Penelope to pay off the cartel. The baby had complicated it. The baby's birth created a new heir, a new set of legal blockades, his act of shoving her. Donovan realized with dawning horror. It might not have been just rage. It might have been a panicked, sociopathic attempt to solve the problem, to induce a medical crisis where he could, as the grieving husband, take control. At 6 a.m., Detective Walsh arrived, a rumpled man with tired eyes. "Dr. Gregory, you said you had something for me." "Detective," Donovan said, not getting up. "I have a video of an attempted murder, and I have the motive. Let's get a cup of coffee. We have a lot to discuss." Genevieve woke up to a blurry world of beeps and soft hums. Her first sensation was thirst. Her second was a dull, pounding ache in her head. Her third, a terrifying, hollow emptiness in her abdomen. "The baby," she gasped, her hand flying to her flat stomach. "My baby." "He's okay, Ginny, he's okay." That voice, deep, calm, familiar. A voice from her childhood, from a life before Brent. Her vision cleared. Donovan Gregory was sitting beside her, his face etched with concern. He was in scrubs, a stethoscope around his neck. "Donovan?" she whispered, confused. Did I die?" "No, sweet. You're in the CICU at St. Jude's. You had an accident." The memories rushed back, sharp and brutal. The argument, the corridor, Penelope, the shove. "It wasn't an accident," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "He pushed me. Brent pushed me." "I know," Donovan said softly. "I saw the footage. My baby," she wept, "is my baby. He's beautiful, a boy. He's in the NICU. He's premature, but he is a fighter, just like his mother. I operated on you both." Genevieve stared at him. You were the surgeon?" "The universe has a dark sense of humor," Donovan said, managing a weak smile. "I was on call." He explained everything. The emergency C-section, the hemorrhage, the baby's fight for breath. He told her she was safe. "Ginny," he said, his tone shifting from doctor to godfather. "I need to tell you what I've learned in the last few hours. I need you to be strong." He laid it all out. The fraud, the debts, the shell companies, Penelope, the cartel. He explained that Brent hadn't just married her for her money. He had married her to use her as a human shield against a legion of criminals. Genevieve listened, her tears drying, a cold, hard numbness replacing the grief. The man she had loved didn't exist. He had never existed. He was a phantom, a story Brent had told her, and she had been desperate enough to believe it. He tried to kill me," she whispered, the reality of it settling on her. "He pushed me, knowing I was pregnant, to get my money." "Yes," Donovan said, his voice grim. "And now we're going to make sure he never hurts anyone again." "He's here, isn't he? In the hospital?" "He's in the waiting room," Donovan confirmed. "He and Ms. Croft have been there all night, waiting for their chance to get to you, or to get to your son." A new kind of fire lit in Genevieve's eyes. The fire of a mother. "I want to see him." "Ginny, I don't think that's wise." "No," she said, her voice stronger. "I won't be his victim anymore. I want to see him, and I want him arrested. I want her arrested." Donovan looked at her, truly looked at her. The scared, naive girl he'd argued with 2 years ago was gone. In her place was Anna's daughter, fierce and unbroken. "All right," Donovan said, "but we do it my way." He paged Detective Walsh. He coordinated with hospital security. Brent and Penelope had been stewing in the waiting room for hours. Brent was a wreck, terrified of Donovan, terrified of his lenders. Penelope was pure ice, running scenarios on her tablet. At 9:00 a.m., Nurse Keaton entered the waiting room. "Mr. Collins, your wife is awake. She's asking for you." Brent shot a look at Penelope. This was it. Is she? "She's stable. The doctor said you can see her for a few minutes. She's in the step-down unit, room 502. Brent stood, straightening his crumpled suit. Thank God. He and Penelope walked to the elevator, a plan forming. If Genevieve was awake but groggy, he could still get her to sign. He still had the papers in his briefcase. They walked into room 502. It wasn't a hospital room, it was a conference room. Genevieve was there, sitting in a wheelchair, an IV pole next to her. She looked pale but resolute. Donovan Gregory stood behind her, his arms crossed. And sitting at the table were Detective Walsh and 2 uniformed police officers. Brent froze. "Ginny, what is this? Who are these people?" "These are the police, Brent," Genevieve said, her voice clear and cold. "I told them what you did." "What Darling, you were disoriented. You fell. I told them." "Did you tell them about Penelope?" Genevieve asked, nodding at the woman who was already backing toward the door. "Did you tell them about the cartel? About the money you laundered? About the papers in your briefcase?" "Stay where you are, Miss Croft," Detective Walsh said, standing up. "This is insane," Brent blustered, looking to Penelope for help, but her face was a mask of detached calculation. She was already giving him up. "We have the security footage, Mr. Collins," Walsh said. "We see you smash her phone. We see you shove her. That's aggravated assault at a minimum. Attempted murder, most likely. And we have your financials," Donovan added, tapping his tablet. "The wire transfers to Panama, the fraudulent loan applications using Genevieve's forged signature. That's fraud, identity theft, and money laundering. I believe your associates will be very interested to know their money is gone." Brent's world evaporated. He looked from the cops, to Donovan, to Penelope, and finally, to Genevieve. "Ginny, please," he whimpered. I panicked. I didn't mean to hurt you. I love you. I love our son." Genevieve stared at him. The man she had shared a bed with, the man who had pushed her toward her death. "The only thing you love, Brent, is the story you tell. And it's over." "Brentwood Collins, Penelope Croft," Detective Walsh said, as the officers moved in. "You are both under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, and aggravated assault with intent to commit great bodily harm." As the handcuffs clicked shut, Penelope was silent, her mind already on her lawyer. Brent, however, completely unraveled. "You won't get away with this, Gregory. You turned her against me. She's my wife. That's my son." "She is my family," Donovan said, his voice flat. "And you will never see her or her son again." The officers led them out. Brent was still screaming, a pathetic, hollow sound. The door closed, leaving Genevieve and Donovan in the sudden, deafening silence. Genevieve began to shake, the adrenaline leaving her. Donovan knelt in front of her wheelchair. "It's over, Ginny. It's really over." She fell forward, burying her face in his shoulder, and for the first time since her parents died, she felt completely and utterly safe. The fall of Brentwood Collins was as swift as it was absolute. The man who had been a fixture in Manhattan's society columns vanished into the drab, fluorescent-lit world of the legal system. The story had every element the media craved. A fallen millionaire, a beautiful, pregnant wife, a violent attack, and the stunning twist of a billionaire godfather stepping in as both savior and surgeon. Donovan's legal and PR teams formed an impenetrable wall around Genevieve. They handled the press. They managed the liquidation of the Lenox Hill penthouse, its cold marble and chrome auctioned off to pay a fraction of the debts Brent had accrued. They represented Genevieve's interests and those of her son, ensuring that every asset tied to the Collins name was severed, cauterized, and removed. Penelope Croft, ever the pragmatist, saw the chessboard clearly. Facing overwhelming evidence and the cold fury of Gregory Medical's legal department, she took a plea deal, agreeing to testify against Brent in exchange for a reduced sentence. She delivered her testimony with the same icy detachment she had used to plan his finances, outlining the conspiracy to defraud Genevieve and detailing the plan to seize her trust. Brent, abandoned and exposed, was a pathetic figure in court. His charm had curdled into a desperate, narcissistic rage. He was found guilty on all counts. The judge, citing the calculated brutality of the attack on his pregnant wife, sentenced him to 25 years in a state penitentiary. Penelope received 7. The gavel fell, and just like that, the phantom of Brentwood Collins was exorcised from Genevieve's life. But while the legal battle raged in courtrooms downtown, Genevieve's own quiet war was being fought in a secure private room on the top floor of St. Jude's. Donovan had her moved from the CCU as soon as she was stable, placing her in a wing he personally funded, one with its own security detail and nurses hand-picked for their discretion. The first few days were a fog of pain, antibiotics, and the dull throb of grief. Not for Brent, but for the life she had believed in, the future she had imagined. The physical healing was a slow, arduous process. Her head ached. The long, vertical incision from the C-section was a stark, angry reminder of the violence. Her world shrank to the 4 walls of that room, to the beeps of her own monitors. But her anchor, the one thing that pulled her from the tides of despair, arrived every few hours in a small, wheeled incubator. Leo. She'd named him Leo Robert. Leo, for the lion's heart she knew he must have to survive. Robert, for the father she had adored, the man whose strength she was only now beginning to understand. At first, she could only look at him through the plastic. He was impossibly small, a delicate bird of a thing, his skin translucent, his chest rising and falling with the rhythmic whoosh of the ventilator. She would sit for hours, her hand pressed against the clear wall, whispering to him. "We're safe now, Leo," she'd murmur, her voice thick. "I'm right here. We're going to be okay. I've got you. And Uncle Don has us." Donovan was her other anchor. He was no longer the imposing chief of surgery. He was just family. He'd shed the formal white coat for soft sweaters or fresh scrubs, arriving before the sun was fully up with 2 cups of coffee, one for her, black, and one for him, with cream, from a small barista-run cart he loved 3 blocks away. He'd sit in the armchair by the window, often not even talking. He'd open his laptop, managing his global empire with quiet, tapped-out emails, his mere presence a statement of protection. He'd field calls from her lawyers, translating their dense legal jargon into simple, actionable choices. He reviewed every one of her medical charts, questioning the nurses on her pain management, on her diet, on her physical therapy. He was the godfather, the doctor, and the guardian, all rolled into one weary, reassuring man. The day Genevieve was finally cleared to hold her son was the day her real healing began. Nurse Keaton, the same nurse from the OR, came in with Dr. Pierce from the NICU. "He's off the vent, Genevieve," Dr. Pierce said, his smile warm. "He's breathing all on his own, and he's ready for some skin-to-skin time with his mum." They gently lifted Leo from the incubator, a tiny, wriggling form wrapped in a blanket, a tangle of monitoring wires trailing behind him. Genevieve's heart hammered. She was terrified. He was so fragile. What if she hurt him? "It's okay," Donovan said, sensing her fear. He was standing by the window, giving the nurses space, but his eyes were locked on her. "You were made for this, Ginny." The nurse placed the baby on Genevieve's chest, tucking him inside her hospital gown. His tiny, warm cheek pressed against her skin. He let out a small, contented sigh and rooted against her, his primal instinct seeking comfort. Genevieve gasped, a sob catching in her throat. This was real. This tiny, warm, breathing miracle was hers. He was alive. She was alive. They had survived. She looked up at Donovan, who was watching them with an expression of such profound, quiet relief that it broke her heart all over again. "I'm so sorry, Donovan," she whispered, her tears falling onto Leo's downy hair. He moved to sit on the edge of her bed, his gaze soft. "For what? You have absolutely nothing to be sorry for. For not listening to you," she wept, "for being so stubborn, so stupid. I wasted 2 years. I let that monster into my life. I put him in danger." She clutched Leo closer. "I almost—" "Shh," Donovan said, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "Your parents, Robert and Anna, they were the most wonderfully, infuriatingly stubborn people I ever knew." A rare, true smile touched his lips. "Your father and I built our first company on a shared belief that everyone told us was impossible. Your mother. She refused 3 of his proposals before she finally said yes, just to make sure he was serious. You get that fire from them, Ginny. It's not a flaw. It's your inheritance." He sighed, his expression turning serious, his eyes holding hers. "When I met Brent, I didn't just see a bad investment. I saw the opposite of your father. Robert was all substance. Brent was all performance. When you chose him, I felt like I had failed them. I was angry, and I was proud." He looked down, his own guilt surfacing. "So I stepped away. I hid behind my pride. I told myself I was respecting your choice. But it was just an excuse. I was hurt. I should have tethered myself to you. I should have fought for you, even if you fought me back, every single day. We were both stubborn, Ginny, and it almost cost us everything." He reached out, his finger gently stroking Leo's head. "You saved us," she whispered. "You saved me, and you saved my son. We saved each other," he corrected, his voice thick with emotion. "You and this little man. You've reminded me what all this is for." He gestured vaguely, at the hospital, the city, his vast, empty empire. It was just a game, a way to pass the time after I lost them, after I lost my wife. Now, it's a legacy, our legacy. 3 weeks later, the day of discharge arrived. The private room was clear of flowers and medical equipment. Genevieve was dressed in real clothes, jeans and a soft sweater that felt foreign on her body. She looked in the mirror. The bruising on her face had faded to a pale yellow, but her eyes were different. The naive girl who had walked into St. Jude's was gone. In her place was a woman, a mother, a survivor. She held Leo, who was now big enough to wear a going-home outfit, a simple blue onesie that Donovan had, awkwardly and proudly, presented to her the day before. Donovan was waiting by the door, holding her bags. "Ready?" She took a deep breath. "Ready." They walked out of the room, past the nurse's station, and into the elevator. When the doors opened on the main lobby, Genevieve flinched at the noise, the sheer number of people. Donovan gently put a hand on the small of her back, a silent, steadying presence. They walked out the front doors. The crisp October air hit her face, the first real air she'd breathed in a month. It smelled of city traffic and freedom. Donovan's car, a discreet black sedan, was waiting. He wasn't taking her back to the seized penthouse. He was taking her home. To his home, a warm, sprawling brownstone on the Upper West Side, filled with books, history, and a newly finished nursery. He opened the back door for her. With the focused precision of a surgeon, he began to fuss with the infant car seat base. He checked the straps, pulled on them, then checked them again, his large, capable hands looking comically oversized against the tiny buckles. Genevieve watched him, a small smile playing on her lips. "All set, Dr. Gregory?" she teased gently. He looked up, a lock of silver hair falling over his forehead. He smiled back, his eyes, so often intense and calculating, now just bright and warm. "It's Don," he said. He clicked the final buckle and straightened up. "Or, if you're feeling formal, Godfather." He closed the door, his gaze lingering on Leo for a moment before he walked around to the driver's side. Genevieve got in the passenger seat, immediately turning to look back at her son, who was sleeping peacefully, oblivious to the fact that his life was beginning. As they pulled away from the curb, Genevieve looked back at the towering facade of St. Jude's Hospital. It was a place of shadows and miracles, the site of her greatest terror and her most profound salvation. She turned forward, toward the future. She reached across the console and placed her hand on Donovan's. He immediately covered it with his own, his grip firm and sure. The Collins name would fade. The trauma would, in time, become a scar. But the family in the car, a billionaire surgeon, a new mother, and a tiny fighting baby, was just beginning. They were Robert and Anna's true legacy, a family rebuilt not on a foundation of blood, but on the unbreakable, tested by fire bonds of loyalty and love. Genevieve and Leo found their new beginning, protected by the one man who had never truly left her side. Brent Collins was sentenced to 25 years for attempted murder and fraud, his millionaire empire revealed to be nothing but a house of cards. His accomplice, Penelope, received 7 years for her part in the conspiracy. But for Genevieve, justice wasn't just served in a courtroom. It was found in the quiet moments, rocking her son to sleep in a home where she was finally safe, and watching her godfather, the brilliant Dr. Gregory, trade his surgeon's mask for the smile of a doting uncle. They were a new family, forged in betrayal, but saved by a love that was stronger than any lie. What did you think of Brent's ultimate betrayal? And what about the twist of the billionaire Godfather? We read every single one of your comments, so let us know your thoughts below. If you love stories about justice and survival, don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who needs a reminder that family is more than blood. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell so you never miss a new story.